You will hear the language of the hunt. Judgments are passed like sentences. Labels are affixed like brands. He is arrogant. He is insecure. He is weak. There is a fleeting, hollow satisfaction in this act. To place a man in a category is to feel as if you have contained him, understood him, and therefore risen above him. By diagnosing the perceived weakness in another, you grant yourself a moment of perceived strength. You become the judge, the arbiter, the one who sees the board with clarity while others are mere pieces to be moved. This is the conventional approach to power, and it is the most common path a man will walk. It is a wide, well-trodden road, noisy with the sounds of clashing egos and the desperate validation of the crowd. This path encourages you to constantly prove your worth, to engage in every argument, to treat every disagreement as a challenge to your honor. It teaches you that strength is demonstrated through loud declarations, decisive opinions, and the swift condemnation of your rivals. The man who follows this path becomes an expert archer, but his arrows are always aimed outward. He spends his life perfecting his ability to strike at targets of his own choosing, celebrating each successful hit as a victory. But he remains blissfully, fatally unaware of a crucial truth. While he is occupied with the endless skirmishes on the fields of others, the gates of his own citadel have been left wide open, unguarded. His focus is external, and therefore his control is an illusion. He believes he is a warrior, but he is merely a reactor. His mood is dictated by the perceived slights of his enemies. His actions are governed by the need to respond to the provocations of the world. He is a ship without a rudder, tossed about on a sea of external stimuli, mistaking the violent motion for progress. This is the mark of the amateur, the emotional soldier who rushes into battle without first understanding the nature of the war. And the nature of the true war is and has always been internal. This is where the path of the strategist diverges. It is a narrow, silent, and often solitary path that turns away from the noisy crowd. It is guided by the timeless wisdom of Sun Tzu, the master strategist, who understood that the ultimate form of warfare is not waged with swords and spears, but with perception, position, and profound self-control. To the strategist, a title like 3 Self-Defeating Habits That Are the Mark of Weak Men is not a lens through which to view and judge the world. It is a mirror. It is a tool for unflinching, radical self-assessment. The strategist knows that seeking weakness in others is a fool's errand, a strategic diversion that consumes precious energy and leaves one vulnerable. Why would you spend your time diagnosing the flaws in a rival general's army when you have not yet mastered your own? Why would you point out the cracks in another man's armor when your own remains untested? Sun Tzu taught, "The victorious warrior wins first and then goes to war, while the defeated warrior goes to war first and then seeks to win." This single principle separates the master from the amateur. The victory is not secured on the battlefield. It is secured in the planning tent, long before the first arrow is loosed. In the context of your life, the planning tent is your own mind. The victory is won here, in the silent theater of your own thoughts, choices, and disciplines. The battle against your own emotional reactions, your own lazy impulses, your own lack of purpose. This is the primary war. Every other conflict is secondary. The strategist understands that the world is not a series of random events to be reacted to, but a terrain to be understood and navigated. And the first and most important terrain to master is your own inner landscape. Therefore, the master strategist begins with the foundational principle: know the enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The common man hears this and immediately begins to study his external rivals. He makes lists of their strengths and weaknesses. He plots their downfall. The strategist hears this and begins the far more difficult work of knowing himself. He asks the questions the common man is too afraid to answer. What are my emotional triggers? Where do I waste my energy? In which situations do I lose my composure? What is my ultimate objective, and how many of my daily actions are a deviation from that mission? He understands that his greatest enemy is not the man who stands against him, but the undisciplined, reactive, and purposeless version of himself. That is the true enemy. That is the weak man who must be defeated. This internal enemy is far more dangerous than any external foe because it whispers to you in your own voice and sabotages you with your own hands. To conquer this inner enemy is to achieve a state of formlessness, of strategic calm. While the common man is a predictable storm of emotion, easily angered, easily flattered, easily provoked, the strategist is like the deep ocean. The surface may ripple with the winds of the world, but the depths remain still, cold, and immensely powerful. He cultivates a space between the stimulus of the world and his response. In that space lies his power. In that space he can observe, calculate, and choose a course of action that serves his ultimate mission, rather than one that merely gratifies a fleeting emotional impulse. He does not engage in unnecessary battles, for he knows that every ounce of energy is a resource to be conserved for the fights that truly matter. He does not seek the validation of the crowd, for his purpose is his own, forged in the fires of self-discipline. This is the beginning of true power. It is not the power to defeat others. It is the power to become undefeatable yourself. This is not a philosophy for the passive observer. It is a manual for the architect of his own soul. The path begins with a single conscious decision to turn the gaze of the hunter inward. For the man who spends his time diagnosing others has already ceded control of his own domain. True strength is forged in the silence of self-assessment. Comment, "I am my own master," to declare your commitment to self-dominion, and subscribe for the coming lessons on the architecture of inner power. To the untrained eye, the world is a stage for visible conflict. It is a collision of bodies, of armies, of corporations, of overt ambitions clashing in the daylight. But the strategist knows this is a grand illusion. The most decisive wars are not fought on open fields. They are waged in the invisible theater of the mind. The outcomes of these silent internal conflicts determine the results of all external ones. A man's empire can be conquered not by a foreign legion, but by a single unchecked impulse from within. His downfall can be engineered not by a rival's intricate plot, but by his own squandering of precious energy on trivial matters. To understand the art of power, you must first master the principles of this invisible war. It begins by recognizing the two great strategic failures that bleed a man of his strength before he ever steps onto the battlefield. The first self-defeating habit is emotional reactivity, which is the unconditional surrender of your most valuable possession, your inner terrain. Sun Tzu taught that a wise general must intimately understand the ground upon which he will fight. He must know the mountains and the valleys, the choke points and the open fields. He must know where the ground is firm and where it is treacherous. The same is true for the domain of the self. Your mind, your emotional landscape, is the primary territory you are tasked to defend. Yet the average man is a complete stranger to his own geography. He is a king who has never mapped his own kingdom. His inner world is a chaotic territory of hair triggers, emotional landmines and knee-jerk responses. He is a slave to stimulus. A passing comment can ruin his day. An ounce of praise can inflate his ego into a reckless balloon. The slightest inconvenience can trigger a storm of frustration that clouds his judgment. He believes his reactions are justified, a sign that he is passionate and authentic. The strategist sees it for what it is, the mark of a puppet. Every time you react without thought, you are allowing an external force to pull your strings. The person who insulted you becomes your master. The frustrating situation on the road becomes your commander. The fleeting approval of a stranger becomes your king. You have ceded control. You have given the enemy the map to your citadel and handed them the keys to the gate. They now know exactly which levers to pull to manipulate you, to exhaust you, to lure you into a trap. An army that can be easily provoked into abandoning its fortified position is an army that is already defeated. A man whose peace can be stolen by the careless words of another is not a man in possession of himself. This habit is profoundly self-defeating because it places your most critical asset, your calm, calculating mind, in the hands of your opposition, or worse, in the hands of pure chance. The architect of his own reality approaches this differently. He does not seek to eliminate emotions. That is the goal of a stone, not a man. Instead, he seeks to become the master of their expression. He achieves this by cultivating a sacred space, a silent buffer between the event and his response. When the world pushes, he does not automatically push back. He observes. He allows the initial wave of anger, pride, or fear to wash over him without carrying him out to sea. In that moment of deliberate pause, he is no longer a reactor. He is a commander assessing the field. He asks, does this situation require a response? If so, what response best serves my ultimate mission? Is this a genuine threat, or is it merely bait, designed to make me waste my energy? More often than not, he will find that the optimal response is no response at all. His silence is not weakness, it is a shield. His calm is not passivity, it is a weapon. By refusing to surrender his inner terrain, he becomes illegible and unpredictable to his adversaries. They cannot find a handhold. They throw their spears of provocation into a void. They have prepared for a fight with a storm, but they find themselves facing the deep, unmovable ocean. The second self-defeating habit is fighting unnecessary battles, which is the slow, continuous hemorrhage of your vital resources. Fire strategist's greatest assets are finite. His time, his focus, his will, his energy. These are the logistical supplies that fuel his campaign through life. Every action, every thought, every conflict draws from this precious reserve. The man who is insecure in his strength feels a compulsive need to demonstrate it at every opportunity. He believes that power is a performance. He turns every disagreement into a public trial of his intellect. He engages in bitter online arguments with faceless avatars, draining his mental energy for the sake of a meaningless point. He gets drawn into petty office politics, vying for trivial advantages that have no bearing on his larger goals. He is the general who dispatches an entire legion to capture a barren hill, celebrating his victory while his main army starves. Sun Tzu laid down the ultimate benchmark of strategic genius. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This is a concept the undisciplined mind cannot grasp. It equates non-engagement with cowardice. It sees the refusal to fight as a sign of weakness. The master strategist, however, understands that this is the very essence of sophisticated power. The need to constantly prove you are strong is the most undeniable sign that you are not. True strength is confident in its own existence and feels no obligation to perform for an audience. It is a lion that does not need to roar to remind the jungle of its power. This habit of fighting every battle is self-defeating because it guarantees you will arrive at the truly important conflicts of your life, depleted, exhausted, and unprepared. You will have wasted your best soldiers and finest arrows on scarecrows. The master of his own domain operates from a different paradigm. He lives by a code of strategic disengagement. Before entering any conflict, he conducts a ruthless cost-benefit analysis, guided by one question. Does this battle move me closer to my ultimate objective? He quickly discovers that 99% of the provocations, insults, and minor power struggles that confront him are irrelevant distractions. They are traps laid by the world to ensnare the unfocused. To ignore them is not weakness, it is profound discipline. It is a declaration that his energy is too valuable to be wasted on trivialities. He conserves his power. He chooses his battles with the precision of a hawk, selecting its prey. And because he so rarely engages, when he finally does choose to act, his movements carry immense weight. His rare intervention commands attention. He has built a reputation not as a noisy brawler, but as a silent force that acts with decisive, overwhelming intent when the moment is right. He wins the war for his long-term peace and prosperity by refusing to participate in the meaningless skirmishes that consume the lives of other men. He has learned that the most powerful move is often the one you refuse to make. We have illuminated the two great theaters of invisible war, where a man's power is unknowingly surrendered, the chaotic inner terrain of emotional reactivity and the wasteful external skirmishes of unnecessary battles. But these are merely symptoms of a deeper, more fundamental strategic failure. They are the visible cracks in the foundation of a poorly constructed edifice. To merely patch these cracks is the work of a journeyman. The master strategist seeks the source of the fracture. He understands that a fortress is not conquered because its walls are weak, but because its architect lacked a coherent design from the very beginning. This brings us to the third and most critical, self-defeating habit: the lack of a clear mission. This is the root vulnerability, the central command failure from which all other weaknesses are born and nourished. Sun Tzu insisted on meticulous planning, on knowing the objective before the first soldier ever moved. He states, "The general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple ere the battle is fought." An army without a defined purpose is not an army at all. It is a directionless mob, a danger only to itself. Its energy is scattered, its movements are erratic, and its will can be broken by the slightest resistance. So it is with a man. The man without a clear, self-defined mission is a ghost drifting through his own life. He is a collection of appetites, impulses, and borrowed convictions. He may have vague aspirations for wealth, for respect, for happiness, but these are not a mission. They are faint clouds on the horizon, not a lodestar by which to navigate. This absence of a central organizing principle, a profound why that fuels his existence, creates a vacuum at the core of his being. And this vacuum will inevitably be filled by the agendas, pressures, and provocations of the outside world. This is the man who becomes emotionally reactive. Because he has no greater purpose to anchor him, every wave of external opinion threatens to capsize him. A criticism is not just a piece of data. It is a fundamental challenge to his unstable sense of self. A compliment is not a minor encouragement. It is a desperately needed confirmation of his worth. He has no internal Supreme Court to render a final verdict on his own value, so he is constantly at the mercy of the chaotic and contradictory opinions of the public square. Likewise, this is the man who fights unnecessary battles. Because he has no significant war to wage, every minor skirmish feels like a major campaign. He argues with strangers online because, in the absence of a real mission, winning a trivial debate provides a fleeting sense of purpose. He engages in petty power struggles at work because, without a personal mountain to climb, every small hill looks like a summit. His lack of a true north makes him susceptible to every magnetic pull, every distracting current. He is fundamentally a creature of his environment, shaped by it rather than being a force that shapes it. The first and most consequential war, therefore, is the war for a mission. It is the internal crucible where a man decides, with absolute and ruthless clarity, what he stands for, what he is building, and what he is willing to sacrifice for it. This mission becomes the sovereign of his inner kingdom. It is the ultimate authority that dictates the allocation of his resources. It is the unwavering standard against which all opportunities and threats are measured. When this internal commander is enthroned, the entire psychological landscape is transformed. The habit of emotional reactivity withers and dies, for the man with a mission has no time for the fleeting dramas of the ego. An insult is no longer a personal attack. It is merely noise from the crowd, irrelevant to the task at hand. The habit of fighting unnecessary battles vanishes, for his energy becomes a sacred resource, reserved exclusively for the actions that advance his central purpose. He develops an almost divine sense of priority. With this internal kingdom brought to order, the strategist then turns his attention to the external world, not as a reactor, but as an artist of perception. He understands that the world does not interact with who you truly are, but with who they perceive you to be. The mastery of this perception is not about deception in the vulgar sense of lying or posturing. It is about a far more sophisticated form of influence, one rooted in the principle Sun Tzu called shi, or strategic advantage. It is about shaping the psychological terrain so that victory is achieved as a natural consequence of your positioning. The man without a mission projects chaos and neediness. He is an open book, and his desires are easily read. The man with a mission, however, projects something far more powerful: depth, focus, and an unshakable calm. His intentions are his own. His emotional state is not for public consumption. This makes him unfathomable. He begins to embody another of Sun Tzu's core principles: formlessness. Be subtle even to the point of formlessness. Be mysterious even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby, you can be the director of the opponent's fate. The common man is full of form. His pride has a shape. His anger has a shape. His ambitions have a shape. They can be seen, measured, and used against him. The strategist, anchored by his internal mission, becomes formless. He does not need to appear strong, so he can adopt the posture of weakness to draw out the arrogance of an opponent. He does not need to appear wise, so he can feign ignorance to encourage others to reveal their hand. He is not defined by any single emotional state or predictable pattern of behavior. His actions are not reactions to you, they are steps in a grander, private campaign. This makes him profoundly unsettling to his adversaries. They cannot anticipate his moves because they cannot comprehend his motives. They are playing checkers. He is playing a game on a board they cannot even see. This disciplined, mission-driven existence inexorably builds the strategist's greatest weapon, his reputation. Your reputation is the shadow that walks into a room before you do. It is a silent ambassador that negotiates on your behalf before you have spoken a single word. It primes the perceptions of others, creating a field of expectation that can either work for you or against you. The man who is constantly reacting and brawling earns a reputation for being unstable and tiresome. He may be feared in the short term, but he is never respected and is ultimately seen as a pawn, easily manipulated by his own passions. The strategist, through his deliberate calm, his strategic disengagement, and his unwavering focus, cultivates a reputation of a different resonance entirely. He is perceived as a force of immense gravity, quiet, centered, and possessing a depth that others can only guess at. His silence is interpreted as thought. His inaction is interpreted as patience. His rare, decisive moves are seen as the culmination of meticulous planning. He does not create this reputation through words. He builds it, stone by silent stone. With every battle he refuses to fight, every provocation he calmly ignores, and every action he takes that is in perfect alignment with his hidden, sovereign mission. This reputation becomes a form of psychological armor, deflecting challenges and securing victories long before any confrontation ever takes place. It is the throne that no one dares approach. You have journeyed into the silent chambers of the self. You have surveyed the psychological battlefield, where your true strength is either forged or forfeited. You have identified the three great internal insurgents: the specter of emotional reaction, the phantom of trivial conflict, and the vacuum of a purposeless existence. Now, before we explore the final act, the methodical strike that dismantles these traitors and establishes a lasting dominion, ensure that you are subscribed. The final initiation into the architecture of power is reserved for those who are dedicated to seeing the campaign through to its conclusion. The culmination of the strategist's art is not found in a thunderous, dramatic confrontation. The world, conditioned by tales of epic clashes and heroic last stands, expects the final move to be the loudest. This is a profound misunderstanding of the nature of sophisticated power. The decisive stroke of the master is almost always silent, precise, and executed with the cold, dispassionate beauty of a natural law. It is not a declaration of war. It is the final, inescapable calculation of a war that has already been won. Sun Tzu described this moment with a potent metaphor. The quality of the decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Consider the falcon. It does not waste its energy in chaotic, screeching flight. It does not engage every lesser bird that crosses its path. It ascends. It circles in the vast, silent emptiness of the sky, conserving its power, observing the terrain below, with a gaze that sees everything and reveals nothing. Its stillness is not idleness. It is the accumulation of potential energy. It waits. And then, when the critical moment arrives, when its target is most vulnerable, most exposed, most unaware, it folds its wings and dives. The attack is a singular, terrifyingly swift event, a release of all that stored potential into one perfect, unanswerable strike. There is no struggle. There is only the decision, the execution, and the result. This is the model for your decisive action against the self-defeating habits. The enemy is not a person. It is a pattern of behavior, an impulse wired into your own neurology. The battlefield is the present moment. The swoop of the falcon is the conscious, deliberate application of your will at the precise instant an old habit attempts to surface. The moment you feel the hot flush of anger rising in your chest in response to a perceived slight, That is the moment of vulnerability. The decisive stroke is not to suppress the anger, but to observe it, to let it pass through you without compelling an action, to choose the strategic calm of the falcon over the blind rage of the beast. The moment you feel the gravitational pull of a pointless online argument or a petty workplace squabble, that is the moment of the strike. It is the conscious choice to disengage, to preserve your finite energy for the true mission. The moment you are tempted by a distraction that deviates from your core purpose, that is the moment. The strike is the reaffirmation of your mission, the disciplined return to the essential task. This is not a single grand act of self-transformation. It is 1,000 silent daily executions. Each one is a decisive blow. Each time you choose discipline over impulse, you are the falcon striking its prey. Each victory, no matter how small, consolidates your power and starves the insurgency within. This is the true nature of internal warfare. It is a campaign of relentless, quiet precision. There is no audience to applaud your victories, no trophy to display. The only proof of your triumph is the growing stillness within you, the expanding clarity of your mind, and the inexorable alignment of your actions with your purpose. You are not fighting a war. You are re-engineering a reality. You are becoming the architect of your own responses, the sovereign of your own soul. What follows this campaign is not celebration, for celebration is itself an emotional reaction, a product of the old world of external validation. What follows is the consolidation. The true victor does not revel in the enemy's defeat. He simply observes the new landscape his actions have created. The objective was never merely to win, it was to establish a new and lasting peace on his own terms. By methodically excising the habits of weakness, you create an internal equilibrium of immense stability. This inner tranquility begins to project outward, fundamentally altering how the world interacts with you. You have established a new reality. The enduring peace is a state of strategic deterrence. Because you no longer react emotionally, you become an enigma to those who rely on provocation to gain an advantage. Because you no longer engage in trivial conflicts, you are perceived as a serious individual, whose energy is reserved for matters of consequence. Because your actions are guided by a deep, unwavering purpose, you radiate an aura of intention that dissuades manipulation. You have not built walls around yourself. Instead, you have cultivated an inner gravity so profound that the petty conflicts of the world simply fail to achieve orbit. They drift past, unable to find purchase. This is the supreme victory, a peace so profound that the very concept of conflict becomes irrelevant. Your reputation, forged in the fires of 1,000 silent victories over the self, becomes your shield and your vanguard. It is the throne that no one dares approach, not out of fear of your wrath, but out of respect for your mastery. So we return to the title, to the promise of a tool to identify the weak. Now you see the test it presented. The undisciplined mind seized it as a weapon to be aimed at others, a way to affirm its own fragile superiority. It was a baited hook, and they took it without hesitation. The strategic mind understood its true purpose. It was never a window through which to judge the world. It was a mirror, demanding a fearless and honest inventory of the self. The mark of a weak man is his chronic obsession with the perceived weakness of others. The signature of the master is his relentless, uncompromising dedication to the perfection of his own internal state. The ultimate power is not the ability to command armies, topple empires, or bend others to your will. That is the fleeting, vulgar power of the material world. The supreme, indestructible power is to become the absolute and undisputed master of yourself. It is to build an inner citadel so perfectly designed and so diligently commanded that no external turmoil can ever breach its walls. The conflict ceases, not because there are no more enemies, but because you have become your own victory.